just checking in the speaking order. Opening government, Udayana, who will be speaking first? Imade, right? Yeah, Christian speaking second. Yeah. Opening oppositions, who's speaking first? CG, who will be speaking first? CO, Sriwijaya. Okay, we're complete. Welcome to the third round of the National University Debating Championship 2024. My name is Shagung from UGM. I'll firstly allow the panels of judges to introduce themselves and the university that they represent.
And I am an educator, and you can call me Jason.
I am Celine Claudia. I'm a panelist, and I'm from UKP.
My name is Aurel Diva Pratiwi. I'm from Universitas Muhammadiyah Pontianak as a trainee.
I'm Salawati as a trainee.
All right, thank you. This round, opening government is Udayana. Opening opposition is UI. Closing government is Brawijaya, and closing opposition is Sriwijaya. The motion for this round is, as the feminist movement, this House opposes the glorifications of summer women. To open the debate, I'd like to invite the Prime Minister.
Summer of Women is actually a good achievement for women, as this label stated that woman is also having a power to lead such a big event. Although OG gonna comes to this debate by portraying that why we regret the glorifications as a feminist movement itself. Firstly, we need to contextualize what is the glorification looks like, right? This looks like the inherent narrative that women have a potential and already achieved the potential itself. I.e., Taylor Swift is success in their concert, for example, or even Barbie successness in the film industry, for example. Hence, women already achieved their goals, right? But B, notice that the glorification bring the narrative that woman is already powerful in the status quo itself, means there's an early satisfaction of woman in the glorification of Summer of Women itself, since people would talk in their social media, oh, women already have power, this proof that, this proof this in the Barbie scene itself, right? How then is not in the intention of feminist movement as how we gonna characterize the feminist movement for you. Feminist movement is there to raise awareness about the woman's situation as a whole. Not only they cater to the woman who is gonna be successful in this kind of summer of woman, they also gonna cater to the woman who is actually being undermined in the status quo itself. What is the example, right? This is a woman who actually in Arab, for example, who is actually in China, for example, who is actually in Asia Tenggara, for example, who inherently getting a negative narrative that they are not capable as we compare it to men, for example, right? But B, to evaluate in which not all women is getting appreciated in the status quo. As my A point has told you that women already, not consensusly being, appreciated, for example, feminist movement are there to raise the awareness. No, not all women are appreciated in the status quo. Hence, this is why they have to oppose the glorification. How oppose the glorification actually align with the motion? First, we giving the counterbalance in approaching the certain issue in this event, which is the Summer of Women. How does the counterbalance form as a counter narrative looks like in our side of the house as an OG as we established to you? First, as we oppose means we are not going to celebrate the win as a whole of woman. Instead, we gonna portray a bigger goals of a woman and the idea that there is still a goals to achieve, which is to cater minority women who is still being undermined or even being oppressed in the status quo itself. Hence, we gonna oppose the glorification not because we do not support women who is currently successful. We oppose the glorification. It is because we know that there is still women are being oppressed in the status quo. Hence, the glorification making this woman who is still undermined, getting polarized in the social media or even in the discourse that is happening, since because society already know that okay, women are successful in the status quo right now. Hence, that's why as a feminist movement, this is gonna be exclusive as a counter and balance, as we are the only side that is, we are the only movement that especially cater to the woman as a whole, right? How this eventually established in our side of the house? A, as we oppose the glorification means we are not going to be satisfied with current status quo, but B, hence if we're not satisfied, we will create a certain more standard to begin with to evaluate which certain standard is actually being capable to categorize woman as a successful to begin with, which is actually to cater woman who is actually being oppressed in the status quo, not stopping in the terms of woman actually being successful, that they are also inherently are privileged women, for example. Why this is important? First, as a feminist movement, we are the only exclusive movement that really cater to the main goals of women in a whole. Hence, there would be no other parties to remind that women are still capable to more other than this movement, for example. Hence, there is no other narrative or even no other party that actually capable to the status quo and telling you, no, women shouldn't stop here. It's only exclusive to the feminist movement, since feminist movement is knowing to advocate from the women's right. But secondly, we do also believe appreciation is enough coming from the society in this event, for example. So in regards of concern that will be of concern from the opposition, for example, like will not be appreciated enough if we oppose the glorification, we don't think it's gonna happen, since society already appreciate this, since you know your friend talk about Barbie, your friend talk about Taylor Swift, for example. Why then by opposing it is good, but we're moving on POI from CEO.
So if you're going to sway the glorification, that means two things. First, people that still go past this kind of glorification are going like suddenly sway to like follow what you're going to achieve. And two, how do you going to double down the standard? Not only women that are not unable to pass it, but they also feel like they need to pursue something bigger goals.
Okay, yeah, the first one, yeah, it's certainly people who actually following the feminist movement would eventually sway to this. And how this actually is gonna be good, is gonna be, cater in my point about how opposition is good, right? First, it's giving we more, is giving us more exclusivity as we are the only counter narrative in the middle of glorification itself, e.g. we are being sensational in the first place. What is it looks like? This looks like the media is talking about how Barbie are beautiful, how it's perfectly executed, for example, and we are there to make a sensation of which we're gonna oppose the glorification by saying that no, women have a better standard. So eventually, society, yes, they will cater and sway into this. That's why we answer the likelihood of why the society would notice this at first, since we are being sensational. But secondly, how then the woman or even the society gonna sway into this? Since second, if we are being sensational, means we are being noticeable by the people, and if we are bringing to you the most important point of woman should not stop here, I do think it's a good message that women should be embrace more about themselves. I do think a good message cater to a good people to eventually sway to us, right? But secondly, to sway women to not get satisfied early. Why then, if women get satisfied early, it will be harmful? Since Barbie or even any other of Summer of Woman is not only established in the concern that only women contribute to this. For example, Barbie have a male director, for example. So it's not only inherently or even netto that women contribute into this. Even though the woman has become main character, we do not think satisfied in this kind of status quo is enough. But three, successful in this industry is not inherently about women, like I explained to you. Why then is it exclusive? First, through only sensation of being opposition from the to oppose this, you would gather the attention from people to actually sway in and know that okay, women have a better standard. If you're gonna do this symmetrically, for example, like like if the opposition gonna think that, okay, we're gonna do the glorification, but also telling the society that the women are capable more, I don't think it's gonna be exclusive or even effective. Since first, you know, if you support this, there's not gonna be sensational point that we explain it to you that we are different from the other kind of narrative. But secondly, if we also are going to glorify it, it means it will be a diverse way of supporting the feminist movement. Feminist movement have a limited, you know, voices, for example, right? But also, if we glorify this as a feminist movement, for example, it would just sway the discussion happening from people that, okay, feminist movement already said that we are satisfied, hence we are not having any incentive to actually go beyond that. But it is exclusive when you oppose it and actually cater to the woman as a whole, as a feminist movement. Thank you.
All right, I thank the Prime Minister for that fine speech. Now to open the case of opening opposition, I'd like to invite the Leader of Opposition.
When my ex-boyfriend watched Barbie with me, the first thing he said to me is that I'm sorry for what men have done to you and the other woman. I don't think Taylor Swift or watching Barbies or having Beyonce makes us think that the world is perfect now. Instead, I think it gives us hope that there are more chance for us to advocate our problems and our issue, that there are possibility that this man will understand the struggle of women and that they will see us as an equal counterpart in the future. I think this renews our hope as women, and it brings more exposure to the issue that has for the longer time being ignored by powerful men in this world. Several points of setup, right? First, what came before the Summer of Women, right? I think what came before the Summer of Women is a very subtle way a subtle form of movement and an extremely grassrooted movement, right? I think the value of feminist movement for the longest time has been attached to the struggle of a very few selected people or selected women. They're very far from a populist consumption. But it also has not been celebrated globally with audience across groups, across identities, and even with men included in that audiences, right? So how does the Summer of Women actually change things? I think it changed things in three ways. First, I think it represents years of progression. I think we're talking about Beyonce, who is a member of a woman of color, for example, and we title her as queen, for example, right? But second, this is a momentum where people across the world idolize and consume art and ideas produced by women. This is not something that is affirmative action. This is something that people do it voluntarily because they idolize Taylor Swift, they idolize Beyonce, they love Barbie the movie because it's artistic and whatnot. But lastly, it represents a future of women. It gives hope that there are more women like Taylor Swift or Greta, for example, that should be celebrated because there are women who's also as talented as men or even more talented as men, right? This is something that I think existed because of the Summer of Women, or at least represented by the Summer of Women. So what I'm going to tell you is two things. I'm going to explain to you why exposure is important for the movement, and second, I'm going to explain to you why it's going to be at best counterproductive in government bench, right? First, regarding what feminist movement actually need. I think we need recognition. We need people with mass audiences that were able to represent women and most importantly, prove that we are actually talented and equally powerful like men. What happens if you oppose this is two things, right? A, I think in the status quo, it's very hard for gray area people, which is the target of this particular movement, to be swayed to support us. I think A, most people who advocate this are people who live underground who lack of popularity, for example, or resources to bring the movement a spotlight, for example. This is like local advocators that we do not know, that most audiences would not care, for example, right? But B, the way they're campaigning this in government bench is by emphasizing the struggle that women experience, which is valid, obviously, but it oftentimes fails to capture the attention of gray area people because of two things, right? First, in the world full of struggles, I think the gray area people would question, why would I have to care about yours, especially when it's the struggle that is very not familiar for me. It's not something that I personally experienced. Maybe this man would not understand the extreme fear for women to walk at night, for example, right? But B, it forces people to pay attention to a negative narrative that is marginally harder for you to pay attention to because it's not pleasing to your eyes, it's not pleasing to your ears. Why would they want to, pay extra attention to this, right? This is what happened in government bench. I think the comparative is easily brings more recognition because of three things. A, people are more sympathetic to things that is fun and entertaining. It sticks in your mind. It sticks to you how colorful Barbie is, or how artistic Barbie is, or how pretty the Barbie is, but without actually learning about the value of patriarchy or what happened, the struggle that exists for women for the longest time. But B, it can also seen as a way of concretely proving through action that this woman can produce amazing product, amazing movie, amazing songs, for example, right? Because we're not only focusing on the struggles through words, we're talking through action, for example, through showing the movie, through showing the music, for example. But see, because this is such a huge event, for example, this is like held globally, like the tour and whatnot, it attracts other people who used to be skeptical to have a majority bias, for example, that this woman worth a shot to be appreciated, worth a shot to be paid attention to. Because there's also a majority bias. People talk about this in Twitter, talk about this on Instagram, share videos about this. It attracts people in the gray area who is used to be more skeptical about this kind of woman to actually listen to the music and enjoy it by themselves, right? I think this is something that is a huge marginal benefit in opposition, right? But I think this is significant because of two things. First, gray area people would most likely opt into supporting feminist movement because they are moved by the message the Barbie movie represents. They are moved by the music that they now understand that is equally good to a song that are produced by men. But secondly, even if they don't directly support by joining the campaign or giving like huge donation, for example, I think at the very least what happens in opposition is they will want to listen to other female artists. They would want to watch other movie produced by female producer, for example, because now they understand that this is worth to show that they are equally good, they are equally talented, for example. So at the very least, they would want to opt to listen to their local female artists, for example, or Tyla, or someone like Raisa, for example, that most men would disregard to begin with, for example. I think they would want to opt to give more exposure to these local artists, even though maybe they do not like support with giving massive donation, for example. That's a benefit that is exclusive coming from our side. But secondly, why is counterproductive to the progress of feminist movement? I think if you oppose this, there will be two things, right? First, you have to tell them that they're invalid, for example, trying to use reasons like, oh, they don't understand about our community struggle. I think this is something that will have to be defined in government bench, right? Because they want to oppose this. I think this is a slippery slope approach because in the end, you're still invalidating your own members, the success of your own members as they are women, right? But second, you purposefully trying to stop your own members from riding the hype, from saying that, oh, we also love Barbie because you want to oppose the glorification, you want to stop it to becoming even bigger because you say that it's bad, right? This is the world that they have to defend. I think it creates two things. First, people are confused as to what kind of woman that is valid now for you to protect, for you to advocate for. What kind of achievement that is valid enough for a woman to have, for example. But second, I think it also creates a narrative that differentiates celebrity or maybe elite women, for example, from the whole struggles of women. It differentiates those people who actually have exposure, those women who actually like have the power to actually advocate this issue from the actual movement, right? This is bad because there will be less capital or exposure, for example. But second, I think gray area people would at best disengage from the movement, but most likely what will happen is they will hate the feminist movement who invalidate the achievement of Taylor Swift, who is like their biggest idol, for example. There will be like disengagement coming from the fans of Beyonce and the fans of Greta to the feminist movement because now the feminist movement antagonize this kind of privileged celebrity, for example, which I don't think this is good for the movement. So proud to oppose. Thank you.
All right, I thank the leader of opposition for that fine speech. Now to continue the case from opening government, I'd like to invite the Deputy Prime Minister. I think perhaps you should pay attention to the mic more closely so that you are audible not only to us but to the live stream.
Beth, maybe some trigger warning, some words may be sensitive. That's said. How is the opposition's case problematic? We need to remember that the success of Beyonce, Taylor Swift, Barbie, etc. are inherently embedded in men, supporting and glorifying them. Because if you look back, these things already exist before. How Whitney Houston is appreciated, how Madonna is appreciated, because they conform to the man view that sees them as divas, that famous woman who should just be in the singer or entertainment industry that entertains men, and doesn't compete with man's domination in the important part where society is functioning and running, such as the business, such as the legal, etc. If we look back, the only appreciation of how women can compete in fields dominated by men, such as women politicians, etc., it paves the way for a feminist movement for growth and advocate the rights of women. And how does this manifest in the past? It is not through glorification. It is through women defending themselves against the patriarchy who reject it. Nobody glorifies when women in Saudi Arabia can drive, right? The opposition doesn't actually give any benefit since these things are started by men and will always conform to the standard of man. How will you promote how women can gain safety in the street? It's not through Taylor Swift concert attended by men because they want to see sexy Taylor Swift. It is through recognizing the pains of women and not contributing to the glorification of idealized women that is started by men in the first place. And exactly because there is hope, we think that glorified in the status quo eventually drown the insensitive of women to look for this hope. See, in the nature of glorification, it makes an idea of you know you win or even satisfied. I don't know why they manifest it as not this. Hence, if they talk about hope, it will get realized more in the concern if you are not satisfied. Hence, we oppose the glorification. And also, they never explain why it's only took feminist movement to celebrate and makes a clear stance regarding the women's achievement right now. We do believe that society already proved the stance of women. For example, your ex-boyfriend know that women are valuable, and we are not going to invalidate all these achievements. We just regret the glorification, not as a whole. So how does glorification actually manifest in the status quo? They never tell you this, that the inherent narrative that women appear equal or stronger than men in the status quo is just because major event involving powerful women happens. This makes the narrative that women are already similar in the same standing as men, ignoring the plight of women that doesn't involve or sidelined by the celebration of these women who actually started by men in the first place. Even if this worked for the betterment of women's right, the feminist narrative is already seen like wars at Barbie, etc. This will create the harm that only powerful and idealized women by men are seen. How does this manifest? We know that works like Barbie, Taylor Swift present an idealized version of women. For example, they're beautiful, they can sing, they're sexy, etc., which also conforms to the idealistic depiction of women as seen by men, which is the patriarchy. This is why they are popular in the first place. You cannot separate Taylor Swift from her male fans, Beyonce from her male admirers, because deep down they all conform to the standard set by men, which are female divas, beautiful women, female actresses, etc. And this brings us to the goal that not tackled at all by opposition. How does this reflect the condition of majority of women, which is why feminist movement started in the first place? Women who work in the common society, in the workforce factories, in the UMKM street sellers, who work as nurse and housewife. These women who doesn't fit the idealization that men was in the first place. And that is why they don't become popular. There is no glorification of women CEOs, of women nurses, of women engineers, things that are predominantly in the men's world, yes?
Why introducing Beyonce and Taylor Swift in your side will suddenly make women will not be sexualized in government badge?
We are not invalidating them. We should just not think that we should glorify them because this glorification started by men in the first place because they all conform to the standard that men set. And how does the feminist movement actually appear in the status quo? It is currently glorifying the summer of women. This comes at the detriment of underprivileged and poor women that I've said before. In the status quo, the women are already appreciated and acknowledge the importance of these affairs and credited them with the proper acknowledgement befitting major feminist work. But what we think is important is how feminist women also glorify women who not fit the idealization of men. Since I tell you how Taylor Swift, Beyonce, etc. are popular in the first place, we think that the goal of feminist movement to make equality with men, including and most importantly at field that man excels, which is I have mentioned before, as the word is patriarchy, predominantly men. Therefore, the essence of feminism is how these women who make the most of society in profession dominated by men can achieve equality. For example, how women factory workers have the same wage as men, how women athletes in sport are seen the same as men. The reason they don't become popular is the narrative is controlled overwhelmingly by men who glorify some of women because they fit the ideal narrative of women. So how will this manifest as an effect to society? There will be little to no change as men see this as a validation of their worldview. Feminist movement sees and glorifies into what they perceive as befitting. There will be no real change. Men will feel more validated in their assumption of women. Okay, TS, Beyonce has so many fans and are powerful, but men ultimately think that they subscribe to their worldview because they think it's natural. but the underlying thing, we want to remove this, which is the man worldview controlling society. Why? Because men already think these women do what women belongs, which will make them for emboldened to reward women to do things that cater their worldview. For example, women cooks, wives who are very dedicated to their husband, because they see the feminist movement as glorifying the things that they see as right, such as how Taylor Swift is a sexy artist. That is what men like, and we validate them. The effect will be that women who work in men predominated sectors, such as business, construction, sport, etc., are seen as lesser. Why? Because there is no real effort to support and glorify them, because we are blinded by this in the first place. These things are more important because they work within the world of men, where men think that they are superior. If you want to break the patriarchy, we put more importance to things that confront them in the face, or at least do not subscribe to the glorification that men did for women who they think fulfill their roles, glorification that men did in the first place. And how the feminist movement can fulfill the goals of women, especially regarding women who have ambition. By not glorifying this, the glorification that comes from men and that women are appreciated because they fulfill their roles will be more shown. So actually women can see the reason Taylor Swift and Beyonce being popular in the first place is because men think that they are the ideal women. Women will realize this and they will not subscribe to this worldview in the first place. And logically, women who are oppressed will think that they don't need to fit the standards of men. As my first speaker said, why stop here? Why is Barbie having a male director who portrays Barbie as the idealized women in a man's world? Why don't the next Barbie film have the female directors instead? It will make the discourse, which is an important thing in the feminist movement, surface. Since women already see the appreciation by men, is because women conform to the standards of patriarchy. That's why they're popular. This discourse then empowers women to appreciate women who are working in the man-dominated society. So the lesser known women will be shown because we do not over-glorify these things that men started in the first place. Women who are not so glorified and appreciated because they work in things that men usually work. In contrast, the extreme glorification that these things that are started by men in the first place, the discourse doesn't happen. The women who work in other sector doesn't come into the surface because the feminist movement itself is embedded and subscribed to the glorification that is propagated by men. Therefore, the feminist movement failed in its original goals. Thank you.
All right, thank you, DPM, for that fine speech. Now to go.
I have a question about regarding the time square. Is it actually 1 minute 1 bell, 6 minute 1 bell, to 7 minute 2 bell?
Ooh, why is that a question?
Tadi pas 6 menit ada 2 kali ting.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, all right. Okay. So just generally, if you don't mind, if you have a timer, you do bring your timer, your own, or if needed, your teammate time you, so that we have multiple timers tracking your speech, yeah? I hope that resolves. But the LO will help timing as well. 1 minute, 6 minutes, 1, 1, 7 twice, 7:15 continuous or repetitive, repeating. Without the ring. Yeah, you can use your own timer. But they will help as well, but you can see your own time, so you have multiple timers. Okay. To continue the debate and close the opening half, I'd like to invite the Deputy Leader of Opposition. You're here.
This debate should specifically talk about women and how to protect vulnerable women, taking into account the nuances of the motion in pop industry or society in general that still undermine women to some extent. The same reason on why in the previous wave of feminism, for example, we glorify women politicians, we glorify women scholars. So glorification has always been our strategy as feminist movement. But secondly, on the framings, the goal of feminism is to at least attempt on creating exposure for women. Moreover, women with powerful achievement and any form of invalidation or opposing or shaming women should not be legitimate in this debate and should not be counted as, fulfilling the narrative or fulfilling the purpose of feminism itself. Because government side cannot take a fiat that opposing under the side of the house will always come into like a butterfly, kind of like opposing, because most likely what happened under government side is like saying, yeah, your movie Barbie is good, but we cannot glorify that because it's a usual art that Christopher Nolan did for the past decade, so you shouldn't be that proud. That's what happened on the side of the house. Meanwhile, under opening opposition, we claim that we defend a status quo where glorification happened, excessive positivism happened, for example, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we neglect any other feminist agenda because we're only talking about like glorification of the summer of women. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we badmouth like men or any other like Christopher Nolan's work, for example. It just means we do not care about other things. What we care is that since there is a momentum for us to like glorify women's achievement, because there in the past there has been no momentum for us to glorify women's capability. For example, we as a feminist, we want to take that chance and we should win on the basis of, of that framing that yeah, it's a legitimate way for women to do this. So what is the winning metric in this debate? Firstly, I'm going to talk about, again, the legitimacy of glorification, because when opening opposition proved to you that this is a legitimate way of feminist movement to, strategize their agenda, for example, we still win this debate. I think, on principle level, when talking about feminist agenda, it's important to glorify what women has done beautifully, regardless of their background. Exactly because women in general, systematically, are lack of resources and political power. Like women directors were able to have exposure, for example, and enter the movie industry, for example, maybe just like in the past 10 years in comparison to men director. No, thank you. So when there is a great figure like woman director or woman diva, for example, that can have exposure in the industry that regard women as an underdog, as feminists, we should always glorify them. The same way we glorify Malala Yousafzai, for example, as a Middle East feminist. The same way we glorify Greta Thunberg as a woman environmentalist, or even Lady Diana or Michelle Obama, because this is a once in a moon momentum that the government side cannot guarantee could happen again, and this momentum is the only way for us to have an aggregate net benefit, which is better and larger exposure towards women's issue and women's capability and feminist movement, exactly what Sutra characterized on global consumption of this pop industry. So, on principle basis, it is a legitimate way for feminist movement to glorify women's achievement as a feminist, and how this is already happening as a past precedence. But secondly, on the impact of like glorification of summer of women, this winning metric catering their problem like women in grassroots level. This is a trend, right? This like summer of women is a trend. So of course, the trend will reach the minority and the underprivileged women through social media algorithm, for example, or through any other means of like exposure that happens status quo like news and etc. So it's easier for women in conservative regions to opt into a trend due to the fear of missing out or whatever. But that will manifest on how this minority woman realize that women could achieve something, or at the very least, this woman in conservative area, for example, realize that the real world Barbie portrayed in the movie is the real world they live in, and the world they live in suffocate women to regard woman just an entity for like beauty or entity for reproduction and so on and so forth. Like what Barbie experienced is an exclusive benefit in regards to how then this exposure will reach on the minority woman that they want to talk about. But then they accuse us that feminist movement under Saudi House will suddenly be satisfied with this like exposure and summer of women. Judges, when there is injustice, justice will only prevail only if we fight for it. Opening opposition take a bold stance that injustice will always happen to women. We don't understand why then, if we glorify pop diva like Beyonce, suddenly justice will always happen and suddenly women will stop fighting injustice. Like the reason why feminist movement wave axis on 4 waves, exactly because we fight for education and then we fight for political rights and so on and so forth. Exactly because with time, women will realize that there will be issues harming them, and they will keep on advocating those legs of justice anyway under our side of the house, right? So what they need to prove when they want to like impose those harms is that how then justice will always happen under their side of the house. We don't understand that. But then let's just move into like more weighing against opening government, and maybe this will preempt any kind of like extensions coming from closing government. Opening government have to prove why then their approach of opposing will not be a slippery slope of invalidation, shaming women, and suddenly will create growth of feminist movement. Like notice that they have never even like in one sentence explained the mechanization of opposing under their side of the house. Because glorification could go hand in hand with fighting on grassroots issues anyway. Because opening opposition believe that what they do when they want to oppose women's achievement but fighting for minority under the side of the house will only put woman against woman, right? To fight in their feminist movement. A very misogynistic basis ideation of feminists under the side of the house. So in here, opening opposition cater better on like mechanizing what kind of feminist movement and what feminist movement should do under our side of the house. But we think under both sides of the house, intersectionality still exists. Feminist social media fighting for summer of women does not mean that female association in Bangladesh will vanish and stop working, right? It doesn't mean that that every woman should be sexy white as Tyler or sexy black as Beyonce. It's not the physique or background being glorified, but the fact that women could fight in industry with men or take a step forward is what being glorified under our side of the house, and how woman issue is popular right now thanks to those pop figures, for example. So the opening government and maybe closing government to some extent, they don't solve their own burden when they want to like what kind of like opposing that they want to talk about, or portray to you that the problem that they impose under the house is solvable, but the benefit of exposure, realizations, and fulfilling feminist agenda is an exclusive benefit under opening opposition. Exploitation is worse under the side of the house because they keep on putting women, fighting against women. They keep on like having no alternative to counterbalance all the problem that women have under their side of the house. We are very proud to win this debate.
Right, I thank Deputy Leader of Opposition for that fine speech. Now to open the closing half of the debate, I'd like to invite the Member of Government.
If you glorify this narrative, it means not only are you evil towards a certain group of women that are more vulnerable than these women in the global north, but also you are historically ignorant of how then feminism is historically rooted to be intersectional rather than just this movement at the end of the day, right? So how then this glorification looks like in this debate? We think that this glorification, it leads to a massiveness of this spreading of this narrative. It means it spreads in social media, news, discourses in anywhere on social media and so on and so forth. So it will dominate the impression of people in general, be it men or women, towards what kind of feminism as an ideology actually, right? Through, for example, so many means. One, this narrative, for example, over-glorified in the pop culture that is so influential, so it will impact mindset of the beliefs of many people. But also, too, it becomes the image of feminist movement whenever they firstly think of what feminism is. This narrative, because glorified, will be something that people are thinking first when they think of feminism. My first contribution, my only contribution then under my speech. Why then this glorification is not only bad in and of itself, but also evil and harmful by itself. Layer one. Why this is against the interest of feminism? We would like to explain to you that feminism as a movement or an ideology want to advocate for the women, right? As the vulnerable actor in this debate. We think that feminism exists because there is an urgency to counterbalance the evil narrative, which is patriarchy. But then opposition never explained to you why then this glorification is the exclusive way to counterbalance that idea of patriarchy that is really harmful. We think that there is already another narrative. For example, women can succeed, women can go to school, to educate themselves despite their economic backgrounds. So what we will provide to you is the counter narrative, right? We want to provide to you the alternative, which is that our portrayal of the campaign in the favor of the advocation of women will be the idealization, will be that those women that are more vulnerable, that are more underappreciated, it is them that we have to glorify rather than these women that already have privilege in the global north actually. We want to explain why then these women are the most vulnerable one and we should have glorified them instead of these women. This is never explained by opening government. They never explain to you about the counter alternative rather than this glorification. We will take that point. But layer two, how then this glorification once again gonna look like? It will be glorified in the pop culture which is very massive to influence how then people think of feminism. We think that due to that strong impact of influence towards so many people, all benefits of this glorification cannot happen at the end of the day. Why? When opening opposition tell you that, for example, due to this glorification of this, summer of women and this pop culture in general, men will have the incentives, for example, to learn about feminism and so on and so forth. But then, when this characterization of movement is missed by OG, we as CG will explain that this characterization of movement should have targets, either men or women, right? We'll explain to you. When the target is men do not even have, for example, the incentives to watch them. Let us admit that the majority of men do not watch Barbie as their favorite movie. The majority of men do not listen to, those songs created by women, for example. You cannot even have the likelihood that men will learn further about this feminism if, in the first place, they do not even have the favor or the incentives, for example, to watch or to indulge this pop culture and therefore incentivized to learn further about feminism. But also, too, I think even if men are all incentivized to indulge this summer of women, we think that at the end of the day, it will also be harmful to the dignity of women, because what is only portrayed to men is only the unified, the universal image of women, that women should be like that, women should be that privileged, women, for example, should be that, for example, social girl and so on and so forth. We think that this will undermine the dignity of women that are not the same kind, which is the ones in the global south, right? But when the target is, this is the harm, this benefit, this is explanation why then benefit cannot happen when the target is man. But even if the target is women, the benefits are not also likely to happen. But before I explain that, yes.
How then glorification of Retno Marsudi as a minister, as a woman minister, means we invalidate patriarchy in Indonesia?
As far as I can remember, this is the narrative that we want to provide to you as the counter narrative. We want to explain to you that those women who can be successful, it is not mandatory for us to glorify them through the summer of women. We can portray to them that you can still be as successful as, for example, those successful women without having to be like Taylor Swift, without having to be like Beyonce, because there will be there will be more realistic hard work. There will be more realistic. There will be more realistic obstacles that you can do rather than to imitate what Taylor Swift does and so on and so forth, right? But yeah, when the target is women, we think that women, even if they are in the favor of this, it means more probably as well they are in the favor of feminism. But you also have to know that feminism also contains different sects. It means it can be a liberal sect of feminism. It can be, for example, a more conservative sect of feminism. But then, what this summer of women instills you with an idea of feminism is the fact that it is only the sect of feminism that is liberal, that should be idealized and advocated to be the main issue in this debate, right? It means when men think of the urgency of advocating women, what they can understand is only how then the struggle of women is only to get as much as possible. They don't clearly understand why then there is another struggle of women, which is not only to be an artist, but also, for example, at least to be happy, at least to be, for example, a happy housewife, for example, at least to have a better education and so on and so forth, right? This is layer 4. Why then this glorification of the underappreciated women is better under our side of the house? One, I think women are already suffering double miseries. Women are already suffering, one, patriarchy, and also bourgeois people, so on and so forth, especially poor women, right? This is not explained by opening government. We will take that. We think that due to this explanation of double suffering, it is these women from the global south that will experience this, that they are the most vulnerable one, that it is them that we should have glorified rather than those women that do not experience this that do not experience these double sufferings to begin with. Why then this is bad? Because the fate of those women that experience this double miseries will be overshadowed by the glorification of the news of the concept. For example, those women in Ukraine that suffer so many things in Ukraine during war are overshadowed by this news of summer of women to begin with. Therefore, we don't want this to happen. We want you to prioritize the women that are most vulnerable. It is them that we should have glorified, not this narrative at all. We oppose.
All right, I thank the member of GOF for the fine speech. Now to open the case from closing opposition, I'd like to invite the member of opposition.
Panels, I think the correlation between the feminist movement and how they interest someone to the thing that they like, it will be attracted to the mindset. Let's see how the urgency right now. Firstly, the existence of summer women due to the trend of the feminism movement is being one of the agenda for doing this feminist movement, right? And secondly, we think the woman is the one who's still hard to accessible for the success, for example. Because of that, we want to glorify as being that aware-thing itself. So thirdly, I think the feminist movement only focus on the content production without seeing how the modern era starting from the trend, for example. So this is should be different to our debate for today. So I think all of bench in here is still lacking for the characterizations how the feminist movement should be like. I think the feminist movement is the movement that want to create a change for the woman itself, right? They need a powerful actor. They need the one who coming with the popularity, for example, and exposure for persuade the mass, right? So it's come from every layer of the society that could be support women to do women. Let's see how the current situation looks like. Just this current situation, just usual movement that like promote content or maybe like do demonstration if it is there is like abuse for the woman itself. So this is just attracting a small layer, or we can call it as a micro impacted to the woman itself. Meanwhile, what we call as the glorification of the summer woman, it will give a more macro action and also macro impacted, right? So in here, I think the glorifications is being one of the standardizations of women for being a success. This will make it to be role model, for example. So this will make it to be happen. I think the OG didn't bring any framing with a clearly statement in here, and also the OO is the lacking of the framing how the glorification of the standardization could be exist. Okay, this is some of the response coming for the government first. I think the government coming with the argument they want to oppose the glorification because they will like to appreciate. It's enough for them to appreciate through the society. First, okay, appreciation is applicable, but only for the micro impacted. So we need in our side is by the glorification, our whole side will know about this, so they will be impacted to the macro impact itself, right? And secondly, in their side, why by the glorification will directly make women to be satisfied. I think in here, when you're creating a movie like a Barbie, or maybe there is a value inside, right? So the woman not directly said, oh, I'm satisfied for being this, because of why? Because two reasons. Firstly, this is as a reminder for them that they need to maintain, to fight it more and more. And secondly, they could appreciate how the struggle that to do to this actor. So the satisfied is not only for I'm already good enough, right? And thirdly, when you're talking about how the males view or the bad ones, such as like just a focus on the sexist Taylor Swift, for example, I think this is only a micro discussion that happened in your side. Because of why? This is not massive. The massive one is about how the people see the Taylor Swift singing in the concert. So this is make them a success actually. So that's why we don't want to stop glorification, glorification with a big massive, because only a small micro discussion happens in their side, right? Okay, respond to CG. Okay, I think CG in here bring about the feminism contain a different sense. For example, they just focus on money and make her happiness. I think this is happiness is created to motivate and layers related to the success. By the glorification or support of the feminist movement, it's also creating the happiness and how people to be encouraged to this role model, right? And also, I didn't hear many contribution or standard coming from the CG, whether they are questioning about why by not counter alternative will still exclusive to the OO, so we can answer this due to our argument. So here, welcome to our argument. Firstly, letter, how the glorification could impact on the people mindset. Panels, understanding of our agency right now. First, how glorification looks like. I think the glorification is inspiring a lot of people. For example, women, oh, I'm still capable for this. Even if some of reject things for them, but this is still glorify, make them better. Because of why? Because they need to have a being a role model, for example. And secondly, I think the demand of the society, for example, the interest of women to the trending, for example, is being a trend in our social media, for example. Because of why? The woman will follow this one. This is a modern era adapted, and they joining this trend, they will achieving one of the feminist movement. Because of why? Because they follow a woman to support women itself. And thirdly, I think the appreciate women still stuck on in our current situation. Because of what? Because the potential achieved by women way is through struggle and a sacrifice for this is only worth it by limited one. So that's why by the glorification is being the alternative. So let's giving the comparisons in here. How the conventional way such as like demonstrate or content or any others alternative coming by OG cannot be resolved because of why? That is only micro impact for the woman, and the second one is only the limited space for the movement. Even in our side, for the modern interested, for example, like Taylor Swift or Barbie movie, first one, we can give to you the macro impact of the woman, and secondly, it will wider accessibility of the movement itself. So, second argument, Summer Woman is a macro feminist movement. Why could it happen? Let's see our urgency right now. First, feminist movements promotes. I think through the role model or actor, the status quo still stuck on the only content beauty, or maybe like a content that still only glorify, or even there is like abuse one is only for the demonstration. I think not whole layer take attention to this because of why they have only on focus. The one thing that will take attention if it is they have the interest on this, right? So that's why by joining a trend, by joining the Summer Woman, it will be the alternative. And secondly, why then Summer Women should be existence? I think the existence of Summer Women gives, firstly, feminist movement get the agenda for running to this platform. This being one of the agenda for the feminist movement, so the Summer Women could be included as their program, for example. And secondly, the Summer Woman is the one who bigger, stronger, and can influence the others, right? For example, like the Taylor Swift make a concert, or Barbie movie has a film that having a ticketing, and this is being a trend, and this is gave a mass of the movement. For example, being persuaded others, so this is one of the women's movement itself. Thirdly, I think the Summer Woman already exists. It will be easy for this movement to do the movement. What does it mean? Means that when we have to see this trend, we are interested to this trend, we follow this, at the end of the day, the feminist movement will happen to our side, right? So compared to OO, why our side is better than OO? Firstly, feminist movement should be, they said the feminist movement, they need mass of this movement. I think there is not any elaboration how the impact exactly, they only focus the micro movement without any glorify how the macro movement exactly. And secondly, I think they're lacking of recognizing how feminist movement can sustain until the end through the Summer Woman. Vice versa, in our side, we could prove to you why this has happened. And thirdly, they're lacking of elaboration how the glorification impacted to the mindset of the mass, how they want to persuade and comparisons in pro to oppose. Thank you.
Right, I thank the member of opposition for that fine speech. Now to continue the case of closing government, I'd like to invite the government whip.
Who deserves glorification? I think that this is the issue of prioritization of glorification. Who that should we should prioritize from the very beginning as feminist movement, right? That's why my member already told you about how then all layers of women should be represented as in all forms of glorification, and this can only happen with CG's alternative, which is the glorification of even the women who are underappreciated, like women who are being a housewife that even scrutinized in feminist movement, for instance, because they are labeled as too conservative, and even the women of global south that are, for instance, even Irfan already told you about the women in Ukrainian war, or even women in Afghanistan, for instance. We think that these are the women that should be the face of feminist movement. And my member already told you before that this is the form of glorification that we want. That's why closing opposition cannot argue something about this is a micro impact, because the glorification itself is already a global thing if a feminist movement done it, because feminist movement has so many ways to extract this kind of narrative. But let's explain more about that, because I will engage to COs first. They explicitly stated that this narrative is going to be a standard for women. Number one, this standard is not accessible for 4 kinds of women. Number one, women preferring low lives, like women preferring to be a housewife and not be that success, which means that your standard is not accessible and not relatable. Number 2, women who doesn't care of pop culture. That's why even if your pop culture is going to be massive, this kind of message is not going to be reached into women outside of pop culture chamber. Number 3, women who are conservative because they have this kind of stigma that Taylor Swift, for instance, is inappropriate. That's why if you want to champion Taylor Swift as your main manpower, it's not going to penetrate the echo chamber of conservative people. But and lastly, women in global south, that doesn't even relate to the discussion of the standard, which means that your inspiration will not work in the very first place because it's not representative. But even if yes, the inspiration can only work under those who are woke and progressive women, right? But then also they are talking. That's why we think that these kinds of standards are not going to be inclusive from the first place, and the glorification perpetuate the exclusivity of this standard. This is what is the harm that is being able to manifest in closing government exclusively. We think, but secondly, under closing government, they talk about how democracy is a demonstracy is a micro impact, right? We think that no, because number one, we already explained to you how glorification is a massive impact in Irfan. Number 2, we think that there are a lot of global demonstration that is being massive. For example, women march that are routinely conducted globally. But number 3, there are also movements like Me Too movement endorsed by United Nations, which means that under closing government, this kinds of counter-narrative is going to be even much more penetrate even more access, more people. Because for some instance, in conservative countries where women are simply happy being a housewife, even though they already know the feminist value, they're going to receive much more appreciation and relatability, and this is very important. The impact that is told by Irfan is very important because the source of this campaign to work is empathy, which means that this empathy can only be created under this kind of counter-narrative that closing government broke, ladies and gentlemen, later. That's why I think that closing opposition cannot outweigh closing opposition in this way. But let's also engage to opening opposition. I think there are 2 kind of questions that need to be explained by opening opposition first. Number 1, why if you are using like people like Taylor Swift that are already popular and celebrated, they need to be glorified. But number 2, why then this struggle of Taylor Swift and Beyonce, for instance, represent all women, right? On question first, we think that no, that the narrative and appreciation toward pop culture artists can exist without the glorification, because they have fans, they can still justify the quality and all of that, which means that even people already defending Taylor Swift in Twitters all over, which means that we don't need this glorification, right? But number 2, we think that this is fragile and dangerous to put trust on popular figure. For instance, Taylor Swift are criticized by being opportunists of feminist value inside their songs and also to promote her songs, for instance. That's why some chunks of feminism are even doesn't want to endorse the Taylor Swift as the feminist movement. If Taylor Swift is already that popular, it will be endorsed by feminist movement as their exclusive man face, right? We think that this is exactly the slippery slope that you have to credit it, ladies and gentlemen. This is a slippery slope about how fragile and dangerous to put trust on popular figures that have controversies and can easily be backlash and can still be easily protested by society, which means that if you put trust on them, indirectly, this society has the push and has the incentive to also put this kind of protest toward feminism as well, because Taylor Swift represents feminism. That's why we don't think this glorification should work. Before that,
so what you want to do is you reduce women's achievement in a very momentum once in a moon, for example, just to put other women against other women. How do you cater all women? Because intersectionality exists on the other side of the house.
No, because here's the thing. This is the biggest difference between glorifying narrative and not glorifying narrative. The narrative can still exist, but the glorification itself that perpetuates the harm. We can still appreciate Taylor Swift and all other pop culture without this glorification exists. But exactly this will be harmful for you because the intersectionality will not exist. For instance, in summer 2023, the suffering of women in Ukraine war and Afghanistan are overshadowed by summer of women. We think that this kind of overshadow of suffering is very important because because number one, it's feminist moral capability to present intersectionality. This is also why then Irfan's argument about how feminist interest is very important, right? But even if this still represents a lot of women, number one, I think that this is still unrelatable for women in Global South and for especially women in conflicts. But number two, the glorification generalized women because you generalize all women wants to achieve a high position. All women want to success in pop culture. That's why the glorification is not inclusive. That's why we think that eventually on the comparative we are better because number one, our glorification expose more problems validating double suffering that exists for women in subaltern, women in Global South, women in conflicts. But number two, appreciation will be more inclusive under our side of the house because we will appreciate women who are undervalued even in the inside feminists themselves, like women who are having threat wife, for instance, women who are doing who are a housewife, for instance. We think this appreciation can only work under closing of government. That's why we are very proud to propose.
Right. I thank the government whip for that fine speech. Now to conclude the case of closing opposition as well as the entire debate, I'd like to invite the opposition whip.
How do you actually evaluate your achievements? This is not something that when you only praising your achievements, but you goes back to nostalgic when you already from the very beginning, like trying to gain your goals, for example, from the pain, from the process to actually being the best, for example. This is something that we are trying to explain to you, judges, because what we are going to explain to you is that the moment when there's glorification exists, it's only like to glorificating how is the achievement looks like, but then there is some kind of discussions within this kind of glorifications, like to explain, oh, this, like Beyonce like passing through like training, night and days, for example, to preparing the voice. Beyonce goes to each country, for example, each tour, for example, without resilience, without all things, for example, and power that spent. Like that means this is something that we want to achieve and not being explained by by the OO, right? But the idea to this is that we're trying to give the universal meanings to all women that we, even if you go to different path, even if you don't know feminism, you are also like fighting to your life, for example. Like this is the basic feminism that we all believe in, closing oppositions, right? But I'm going to respond first to the OG, right? OG idea is very very granular. We don't think that this is something that's very, it's very clear in OG, right? But I'm going to respond to three things. First, how then summer of woman is going to like sexualize women. We think this is very less likely to exist because three things. A, most of the glorifications come first from the fans, for example. People that internalize feminism, people that want and like, people that glorificate this actor. So it's less likely for them to actually like, making like bad portrayal, like bad framing, or like thinking bad, for example, because this is immoral for them as they are believing to this kind of things, for example, right? But two, even if it exists, remember I already told you that this is only like in smaller capacity, which means this is not going to be broad, for example. This only limits to some circles that's kind of fetishes, for example, they own certain fetishes, and they're trying to sexualize because they think that this is okay, for example, inside of the circle. So that means the impact of the magnitude is not something that is very significant in the OG, right? But two, their goal is to trying to create another kind of standard. How it looks like? It looks like they need to solve all problems. They need to focus on problem. This is not impactful because if you're trying to talk to the woman that is on the suppressed, like to solve the problem of women, they are unable to do that, judges, because they are on the position that they need help, right? That is exactly the one thing that is very accessible to give is that the hopes, is that the message that you are able to fight. In regards you don't know anything of that, you are still want to live, for example, this is what we want and uphold, like, but before that, any POI.
When you said that this glorification is to also glorify what kind of achievement that will look like, how can you as a feminist cater the vulnerable women that do not define happiness to be, like Taylor Swift, Beyonce, and so on?
I think I'm already explaining to you that even if we are not only glorifying achievements, but we also nostalgic to any process of how Taylor Swift like building the process, for example, until they able to achieve that Summer of Women, for example, in which become a lifetime achievement, for example, that all people know. So that means this idea give like sense to people that you are able to go to this like. But lastly, like I think the glorifications is also comes to like there's a lot of process, like people agree to this, people believe to this, for example, and these positive discussions like supporting feminisms are like not really easy to be swayed like to how OG is trying to portray, like you suddenly you are going to oppose this and then people are going to like sway to your like to, oh yeah, this is something that is wrong, for example, you need to oppose. No, ladies and gentlemen, because you need to explain first how the society are going to react to how your action looks like, for example, how then you're going to react to your stance, like opposing what all people being respect about, opposing what people to think that is true. Like we think this is very hard for them, and it should have more burden of point to prove on that. Like, but even if so, we think this is only exclusive to certain people that is like. To people that is realizing their conditions, for example, to people that is not confusing whether they under very suppressing conditions, right? At least, even if you don't know you're in suppressing action condition, you're unable to sensing that you are on the patriarchal conditions. You're able to give the hopes, which is something that is not related to your current conditions or your basic informations, because this come from emotional, for example, that you support. But I'm going to like, why then we are better than OO, right? Two things. OO goals is want to achieve achievement by like try to not opposing this and like trying to tell like, sure, this is what we are achieved, and but there is a lot of problem to actually done, right? We think the prerequisite to this is that the explanation first to how then society looks like. Why then the Summer of Women was the only prerequisite for you to gain this kind of to gain huge amount of support, to gain huge amount of people that want to supporting, right? This is already explained by member of oppositions, because we are telling you that this is one-time moment that feminist movement should not laugh about, right? This is something that you want to do because it's very strategical, right? But we already like a lot of framing, like all people already agree that all conventional way that being done is not very important and not very significant, because then lesser awareness for people, or like lesser interested people like will not engage that. But at least we already have this Summer of Women. We think that it is very likely for you like to create change or like to create support society. That is because all society all agree to that, right? This is how you are going to penetrating to society in a whole, right? But trade-off, even if we have standardizations, we think that this is very okay. Three things. At least this put safety echo chamber for women to actually expressing these feelings, because this don't even. Because of this, even if you are going to be, being undermined by other people, you are going to say no, because my people are already building this, my woman already building, etc. So at least this gives a safety echo chamber for you, for women to actually expressing their feelings or expressing their ideas without any kind of hesitations. But at least even if then this kind of standard is something that very harmful, we think that is very okay, because it's better because you put your standard is coming from people that is same from you. It's not standard that's set by men, but it's standard that comes from people in you. So I think like in the feelings like why would you go to that kind of standardizations is very okay, because these same people as you, right? But lastly, like I think in ECG, I think at least we already explained to you how then this not going to significant impactful to the most of majority. And lastly, this narrative, we are proud to oppose.
All right, I think the opposition wait for that fine speech. Now it's the time for the judges to deliberate. Please do it outside, but not too far from the room, so that we can call you back once the results are in. Thank you.